Welcome to our Thyroid True Solutions webinar. We're going to be looking at true thyroid solutions here that will help you shed your weight, get your energy back, and beat the depression once and for all so that you can live that life that you deserve, even if you've been told all your lab tests are normal. Many of you are on this webinar tonight because you've been to your doctor told you your lab tests are normal, yet you still feel lousy. Here's what I'm going to tell you. There's no way, and I repeat to you, there's no way your lab test can be normal and you still feel lousy. Part of the reason why is because you've got these hidden triggers. Right? There are about nine very common hidden triggers which are causing 90% of your thyroid problems. It's not all of them, but it's 9 very common triggers that traditional medicine doesn't talk about. And simple changes that you can make are going to change your life for the better. My name is Dr. Gil Kajiki. I'm a certified functional medicine practitioner. I'm also a licensed chiropractor in the state of California. I'm modestly known as the miracle doctor that other doctors turn to. I do have other colleagues that turn to me for advice. I in turn turn to them as well. I'm the creator of the Valley Thyroid Recovery Protocol. That's our whole focus, is to get you recovered from these thyroid issues. And for the past 9 years, I've helped over 1,000 low thyroid patients from all over the world. In 98% of those cases, the patients are able to see long-lasting improvement in just 6 to 8 weeks. So sometimes it's 2 weeks, sometimes it's 12 weeks. But on the average, my patients report to me that they start to see noticeable improvement within 6 to 8 weeks. My practice is primarily phone and Skype, so there are no demographic boundaries for me. I talk to people all over the world through Skype and phone, and what we found is that it's just as effective as being in the office face to face. In fact, even better, because you'll save a lot of time and you don't have to leave your house. So here's what you're going to learn during this presentation. The true cause of your thyroid problems. We're going to look for the root cause of your thyroid problems, and it's probably not what you've been told. We're also going to tell you about the key to understanding your lab tests. What the lab tests show you are not always what's going on. And as I told you before, there's no way your lab test can be normal and you still feel lousy. So I'm going to show you what your doctor's missing when we go over the lab test samples. How to finally overcome that weight, fatigue, and depression naturally. Weight is not your problem. I know a lot of you are watching this webinar because you've got this stubborn weight that won't come off. I'm going to tell you, your weight is not the problem. There are problems causing that weight, and we need to find those problems that are causing the weight, and very likely they're those triggers that we're talking about. And what do you do if your medication isn't working? A lot of you watching this webinar right now have taken your medications faithfully. Maybe they've worked for a little while, maybe they haven't worked at all. But now what do you do if your medication isn't working? Your doctor's just going to change the medication or raise the dosage or do something different with the medication. But if it's not working, what are you going to do? They usually don't have any kind of an option. And I'm going to talk to you about your little known relationship. This is kind of the secret in the medical industry, is that the majority of your thyroid problems are related to your autoimmune system. And if you don't correct that little known relationship between your immune system and your thyroid, you will not get better. So why is this important to you right now? Most of what you've been told about your conditions is probably dead wrong. If you're getting your opinions from traditional medicine, the likelihood is your only choices that you were given were medication, radiation, and surgery. If the medications are no longer working, you need to do something right now. I'm not a medication hater. I don't believe that medication is the solution to everybody. However, if they're not working, you need to find out why it's not working. You need to find out right now. And if you've been told all your lab tests are normal, but you still feel lousy, then you need to watch this information and really take it to heart right now. Also, if you've exhausted all your treatment options and you don't know what to do next, people typically contact me last. This is probably one of your last resorts. Okay? That's when we do our best work, is that you've exhausted all your treatments, you now know what doesn't work, so now you're going to take a look at a new method and see if this makes sense to you, and you'll know if this is for you or not. How do you know if this is for you? If you've got a thyroid-related symptom like fatigue, weight gain, heart palpitations, insomnia, digestive issues, brain fog, depression, this information is for you. If you've tried everything and you haven't seen any kind of results in the future, have you tried herbs and vitamins and minerals and enzymes and energy healing and faith healing and medication? Have you tried everything? Some people have already even tried surgery and still they're having some problems here. Okay? And does the doctor ever explain to you what the true root cause of your symptoms are? Or do they just sign a prescription and just hand it over to you? We're going to actually explain to you. We're going to take the time to explain to you what the true root cause of your symptoms are. And if you want to improve your condition once and for all and not mess around with this other stuff, this is for you. This all started with my story about my wife, Kim. Okay, we tried the conventional route, all right, and it didn't work out. So if you've tried this conventional route and it's still not working for you, this is something that you may be able to relate to. So this is a picture of my wife, Kim, and I. This is pretty recent, last summer. She's had Hashimoto's for well over 10 years. She was a very active, healthy executive and mom. She worked for a large company as a human resources person, traveling all over the world, 2 teenage kids. Things were really good for her. But what happened was one day, things started to slowly unravel. She went on a business trip and she came back and she had a cold. But this cold just kind of lingered and lingered and lingered. And then the fatigue set in and she really didn't know what to do about it. But she'd gone to the doctor and the doctor said, "Hey, you've got this Epstein-Barr." Okay. So she has this Epstein-Barr. There really is no treatment for the Epstein-Barr, at least through the traditional medical route. But they discovered that she had this Epstein-Barr virus, and this is why she was getting this fatigue. But this fatigue started to get fevers. She started to lose bits of her hair. She started to go into depression. She had insomnia. She had digestive issues. You know, she'd been back to the doctor several times. All the blood tests were normal. The doctor said it was normal. You have teenage kids. You're traveling the world. You have a high-stress executive job. Of course. Does this sound common to you? Does this sound familiar to you that are out there where you're working hard, you're trying to support your family, and the doctor says, well, it's normal. It's stress. Of course. What do you think is going on? So she had to get these frequent B12 shots just to stay semi-functional. And this continued for several years, going through night sweats, heart palpitations, insomnia. Over the course of time, she gained 50 pounds. And I know some of you women out there, if you gained 50 pounds, that in itself would be depressing. That in itself would cause you to have some stress. Well, she gained 50 pounds, but she kept on going, right? Started losing her hair, right? The MDs didn't have any common answer for her. It finally all hit rock bottom. And I very distinctly remember this. I was asleep. She sits up in the middle of the night and she says, "I can't breathe. My heart's pounding like crazy." And of course, when you can't breathe, you start getting anxiety. And I said, "Do you want to go to the hospital?" And she says, "Yes." So she went to the ER. We went to the ER, 3 a.m. And I figured, they're going to give her some oxygen, and then she's going to probably leave her there, till the morning, and then everything will be fine. Well, this was about maybe 7 or 8 days before Christmas. Well, what ends up happening is she doesn't get released, and they keep her on oxygen. They admit her. She stays overnight. They keep her on oxygen. They give her some antibiotics, and she's basically on oxygen in the hospital for about a week, doing nothing at all, just resting there, laying there, getting oxygen and resting. Well, I had started to study functional medicine during this process of her getting frustrated with these doctors because nobody could figure out what was going on. So I thought, I've got to take the bull by the horns here. I've got to figure out what's going on with my wife because these doctors don't have an answer. So luckily, I'd done a blood test about a week before she went in the hospital, and the results came back. I got the results, and I said, oh my gosh, I know it's wrong. So I very excitedly ran over to the hospital with the test results in my hand. Her doctor happened to be there, and I said, I know what's going on. I know what's happening. She's got Hashimoto's. And the doctor looked at the test results, and he said, you're right. She does have Hashimoto's. I said, great. What do we do? What do we do for it now that she's got Hashimoto's? And the doctor said, well, we're going to give her some thyroid medication. And I said, but why would you give her thyroid medication? This is an immune system problem. And he said, because that's how we treat it. Now think about this. The immune system is attacking the thyroid, but they're going to treat it with thyroid medication. How does that make any sense at all? It doesn't. It doesn't make any sense at all. It makes no sense to me, and it shouldn't make sense to anyone else. But that's the way they treat it in traditional medicine. And so because that's the way they treat it in traditional medicine, that's what they're going to do. Well, luckily for us, she was well enough to leave the hospital, and I fired the doctor, and we left the hospital. And we went on this search to treat her Hashimoto's, to take care of these different root causes that are causing this Hashimoto's problem. This is what I want you to know. If you have Hashimoto's, this is more of an immune system problem, not a thyroid problem. Her immune system is getting agitated and attacking the thyroid. So through functional medicine, I was finally able to help her. And the turning point was I studied voraciously. I contacted other colleagues that knew more than I did. I went to seminars to learn about Hashimoto's. I watched webinars like this. I read books. I listened to audio tapes. And I really, really learned what this Hashimoto's was all about. And I applied what I learned to Kim's situation, and it took about a year to resolve, but a year later, she had no symptoms and on no prescription medication. And now we're about 13 years later. She got diagnosed with the Hashimoto's. She's still not on any kind of medication. And it was at that point we realized she's not the only one that's like this. There's got to be millions of other people across the country that are getting this same story, that don't know what to do, that don't know where to turn next, that need this help and need this information. And so we totally changed our practice from a chiropractic, musculoskeletal type of practice to a functional medicine practice, specifically looking to help Hashimoto's, autoimmune, and thyroid cases. To this day, Kim's fully healed. Yes, we have to manage things. Yes, she has periodic flare-ups, but she's fully healed, and we're constantly monitoring and watching her condition so that it doesn't turn for the worse. All right. So I understand firsthand how low thyroid issues and dealing with an inattentive medical system can make life miserable. Okay? But I want you to know this. It's not you. It's them. Okay? They are making you feel like the problem. Just because they don't know the answer, that doesn't mean that there isn't one. Okay? My attitude is there's always a solution. There's always hope. Just because I don't know the answer, that doesn't mean there isn't one. And if I don't know the answer, I have colleagues, I have resources, I have PubMed publications, I have research. I can find the answer, or I can send you to the person who has the answer. But believe me, there is always a solution. Please don't ever feel like you've run into a dead end. All right, so let's talk about standard thyroid treatment. Most doctors practice 1960 style of thyroid treatment. I mean, think about this. Your choices are this. In traditional medicine, your choices are medication, radiation, and surgery. That is it. They won't guide you on diet. They won't guide you on lifestyle. They won't talk to you about your adrenals. They won't talk to you about herbs and vitamins and minerals and enzymes. Your choices are medication, radiation, and surgery. Now, I'm not a medication hater. I just hate it when it doesn't work. Some people need it. I don't have a problem recommending people go to their doctor and get medication if they need it. If that's going to help resolve the problem, some of you may need medication. Okay? The names of the drugs have changed, but the method of treatment evaluation have not. It's been that way. It's been the same way in the traditional medical world since the 60s. Nothing's changed. You're still going to get medication, radiation, and surgery. Whether you go to the best endocrinologist or the worst endocrinologist, or you go to the top 5 medical hospitals, college hospitals in the nation, you're still going to get medication, radiation, surgery. I'm going to give you the latest in thyroid information that's going on right now. Okay, as I mentioned, in traditional medicine, your options are medication, radiation, and surgery. They're controlled by the pharmaceutical agencies and they're controlled by the insurance companies. And that is their only options, which means that is only your option. The typical tests that you will get ordered from your thyroid endocrinologist, specialist, GP are TSH, free T4, and maybe if you beg them enough, you'll get free T3. Why is that? Because those are the only tests they need to justify giving any kind of thyroid medication. Okay? But how can you manage health without all the information? Okay? Burning out the thyroid gland with hormone replacement, it's a 50-year-old model. You need more information. You need better information to manage your health and look at the root causes. You won't get it from just 3 thyroid tests. This is what a full thyroid panel is. Okay? It's these 3 tests are what they give to you. Okay? Plus all these other tests. This is what's available out there. Why they only give you these 3? Because these are the only 3 they need to justify giving you medication. Okay? I made these checks here because these are the thyroid antibodies. The thyroid antibodies tell you if you have Hashimoto's or not. Okay. There are 6 common patterns of low thyroid function. Okay? 6. This is big news right here. Okay? Primary hypothyroid, pituitary gland dysfunction, underconversion, overconversion of T3, binding globulin, and thyroid hormone resistance. We'll go over those in detail. Here's what I want you to understand. If you have primary hypothyroidism and you are getting medication as your only source of treatment, you only have a 17% success rate. Which means, for those of you who are taking medication only as your sole source for treatment for your thyroid condition, there's an 83% chance that it will not work and only a 17% chance it will. Why is that? Because primary hypothyroidism is the only pattern of low thyroid function that will respond to medication. So if your doctor said to you, Mary, I believe you have low thyroid function, we're going to give you some medication. Here's the script, go get it filled. Oh wait, by the way, I want to tell you this. There's only a 17% chance this is going to work, and there's an 83% chance it won't work. Have a nice day. How much time does the doctor spend with you? 5 minutes, 10 minutes? That's about what they can say. Do they ever say that to you? Do they tell you that part? No, they don't. And if they did, would you just accept it, saying, okay, yeah, I'll take the 17% success rate? I would say, don't you have something with better odds than that? Okay? But that's primary hypothyroidism. That's only 1 out of 6 patterns of low thyroid function. Pituitary gland dysfunction. Your pituitary gland tells your thyroid gland what to do. Your thyroid gland is just a factory. It just pushes out thyroid hormone. Your pituitary gland in your brain is actually what governs and tells your thyroid gland what kind of thyroid and how much to put out. So if you have an anterior pituitary gland dysfunction, then your thyroid gland is likely not to work properly. How do you get pituitary gland dysfunction? Stress, particularly emotional, psychological stresses, start causing that pituitary gland to dysfunction. Underconversion of T3. T3 is your active thyroid hormone. T4 is your inactive thyroid hormone. Your body has to convert T4 into T3. But your body makes 93% of the hormone is T4 and only 7% is T3. So your body has to convert that T4 into T3. And the T3 is the active stuff. That's what really counts. Well, that conversion will typically occur in the liver and in the gut and other tissues. So if you have a gut issue, how good are you converting? If you have liver congestion or you feel like you're toxic, how good is that T4 to T3 conversion? It's not working very good. Okay? And then there's over-conversion of T3. So your T4 converts into T3, but it makes too much T3. So it's like having too many cars, too many thyroid hormone cars trying to get into the garage at one time, and it just gets a jam up. And you don't get the proper kind of conversion because you have too much of the T3 in there. Okay? And then there's binding globulin dysfunction. The binding globulin is like a protein. So the thyroid hormone can travel, but it can't swim on its own. So it needs a protein to bind to. So that's called a binding globulin. Well, that protein, think of it as a thyroid hormone passenger, has to get into a thyroid hormone taxi cab. If you don't have enough taxi cabs and you have too many thyroid hormone passengers, then you have thyroid hormones that can't bind and can't get to the area that they need to. So this is a binding globulin dysfunction. Inflammation, stress, birth control will often cause this binding globulin dysfunction. And then there's thyroid hormone resistance. If you've been on medication, thyroid medication, and they've kept raising it and 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 raising it over the years, you're going to build up a resistance to it. Just like anything else, you build up a resistance to what's going on in your body if you aren't managing that. So these are the 6 common patterns. How many of these patterns does your doctor tell you about? None. They don't tell you about any of the patterns. All they do is they just give you this medication here. But these are 6 common patterns. So those of you who are on medication, there's only a 17% success rate. And the likelihood is you're watching this webinar because you are part of the 83 that it's not being very effective. So let's talk about the Hashimoto's here. Okay? People come see me because they think they have a thyroid problem. Most of the cases of thyroid are number 2, hypothyroid. Now, the way you determine hypothyroid is a test called TSH. If the TSH is above 3 or higher than 3, then you have hypothyroid. If the TSH is below 1.8, then you have hyper or fast thyroid. Now what we know is that 70 to 90% of all the people who have this hypothyroid problem have a condition called autoimmune Hashimoto's. Okay, so for those of you who are watching this webinar, if you have hypothyroid, there's an 80% probability that you have autoimmune Hashimoto's, which means your own immune system, number 3, is attacking, number 4, your own thyroid. So if your own immune system attacks your own thyroid, that's an immune system problem, not a thyroid problem. Okay, that's what you call autoimmune Hashimoto's. If your own immune system attacks your own joint, that's called rheumatoid arthritis. If your own immune system attacks your colon, that's called celiac or diverticulitis or Crohn's. If your own immune system attacks your pancreas, it's called diabetes 1. Okay, these are immune system problems more than they are body dysfunction problems. And this is where traditional medicine is missing it. These are primarily immune system problems. Okay? Hashimoto's is not a thyroid problem. Okay? Many of you watching this have Hashimoto's. This is not a thyroid problem. This is an immune system problem. Okay? So let's go back here. If your own immune system is attacking your own thyroid, where's the problem? The immune system. What does levothyroxine treat? Immune system or thyroid? What does Synthroid treat? Immune system or thyroid? So if you're treating the victim but not the bully, how well are you going to get better? Not very likely. Okay, so let's go over this full flow chart because this is what's going to put it all together for you. Okay, we talked about this. If you have a thyroid problem, most of the cases of thyroid are hypo, which is a slow thyroid. 70 to 90% of these thyroid cases are autoimmune in nature, where your own immune system attacks your own thyroid. But how do you really know if you have this? What if you don't know if you have autoimmune Hashimoto's? Well, you do a test called antibodies, and we talked about the antibodies tests, right? These right here. TPO antibodies and antithyroglobulin antibodies. That's the test the doctor does to see if you have Hashimoto's. Did your doctor do that? Not likely. Why not? Because it's an immune system problem. And they don't have medication for Hashimoto's. They only have medication for low thyroid function. So you do these antibodies tests. If the antibodies come out positive, then you have Hashimoto's. If the antibodies come out negative, then you have something called triggers. Okay? We're going to go over triggers very, very carefully in just a little bit. But here's what you take away from this. You get the antibodies test. If they come out positive, you have Hashimoto's, which means you have an immune system problem that's attacking the thyroid. If the antibodies come out negative, then you have something called triggers. Okay? So how do we resolve this? If you have Hashimoto's, you're going to do 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you have triggers, you're going to do 3 and 4. So now you go from number 5 to number 6. Okay? So you see number 6, 1 and 2. Number 7, 3 and 4. So if you have positive antibodies and you have Hashimoto's, what do we do? 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you have negative antibodies, then you have triggers. We're just going to do 3 and 4. Okay, section 6, number 1. Squelch the NF-κB protein complex. NF-κB is a protein that's embedded in your cells. When this protein becomes activated by your immune system, it starts causing widespread inflammation. But this inflammation activates the protein, and the protein causes inflammation, and the inflammation activates the protein, and the protein causes inflammation. And you have this vicious cycle of protein activation inflammation. There are no known drugs to break that cycle. And think about inflammation. You have brain fog, that's inflammation in the brain. If you have bloating, that's inflammation in the gut. If you have muscle or joint pain, that's inflammation in the muscles and the joints. If you have inflammation, say in your, if you have hair loss, that's inflammation at the hair follicle. So you got to squelch this NF-κB protein complex. Okay? Like I said, there are no known drugs to be able to break that cycle. But there are some very well-known, well-established natural compounds shown in the research to break that cycle. So we're going to break that NF-κB protein cycle with these liquid emulsified compounds. Then we're going to do section 6, number 2, is calm down the immune system response. Okay, we do that through controlling T regulatory cells. Think of T regulatory cells like conductors for your immune system. Okay, we need to control these T regulatory cells. Okay, how do we do that? By fixing the gut. Because 70% of your immune system is housed inside your gut. So for those of you, do you have acid reflux, bloating, GERD, gas, constipation, loose stools? Maybe you don't have bowel movement every day, the water clouds when you flush. That's an immune system issue that's inside your gut. And when your gut gets irritated and agitated, it's going to start flaring up that immune system, then causing your immune system to get upset and attack and destroy thyroid tissue. Section 7, number 3, is identify triggers. This is the part where I do my best work, and this is where most doctors miss it. So what I'm going to tell you is extremely important. Triggers are body dysfunctions that agitate the immune system. So triggers here agitate that immune system and cause that immune system to attack the thyroid. But triggers are also body dysfunctions that very closely mimic a thyroid problem but isn't a thyroid problem. Okay, so let's review that. What are triggers? Triggers here are body dysfunctions. These body dysfunctions agitate that immune system, which cause that immune system to attack the thyroid. However, triggers are also body dysfunctions that very closely mimic a thyroid problem but isn't a thyroid problem. So let's think about a thyroid problem. Fatigue, weight loss, weight gain, digestive issues, insomnia, palpitations, depression, anxiety. Could that be some of these triggers? Yes, absolutely. Could it be a thyroid problem? Yes, absolutely. Could it be the autoimmune system attacking the thyroid? Yes, absolutely. So you could have the thyroid problem, you could have the triggers, and you can have the autoimmune component all going on at the same time. Is levothyroxine going to fix that? Probably not. Okay, so section 7, number 3 is we have to identify the triggers. How do we identify the triggers? What's the most accurate way to do that? Is lab testing. Okay? There are different media for lab tests. There's blood, there's stool, there's saliva, there's dry urine, there's hair, there's breath. There's all different types of lab testing. Lab tests tell me which of these triggers do you have. It tells me the type of triggers. Is it an iron anemia? Is it a B12? Is it a B6, B1? Is it a leaky gut? Is it low on hydrochloric acid? Is it dysbiosis? So it tells me the type of trigger you have. It tells me which trigger you have. It tells me how do I create the treatment plan. So now that I know the root cause, I can create the treatment plan for that root cause. But most importantly, what lab tests tell me is what's the priority of the trigger to go after in order. So if you've got 5 or 6 of these different triggers, which one do you go after first? How do you know which one? You might have adrenal dysfunction, hormone balance, inflammation, food sensitivity, gastrointestinal problems, and blood sugar instability. But which ones do you go after first, second, third? Which one is going to make the biggest impact in the shortest period of time for the least amount of money? That's what you want to go over. This is what we do best, is identifying those triggers. Okay? Once we get the triggers figured out, then I do section 7, number 4, is remove triggers. So now that I know the root cause of it, then I can start creating natural protocols with de-inflammatory diets, vitamins, minerals, enzymes, amino acids, detoxes that start removing these triggers, which are actually the root cause, which will then start calming down this immune system so it won't attack your thyroid or your joints or your gut or your brain. And then if there's anything left over, now we start addressing the thyroid, because the thyroid is not the high priority. And this is the little known secret, is that most of these problems are immune system problems, not thyroid problems. Okay? Levothyroxine is not going to fix this whole thing here. And we are integrating all these body parts, all these body dysfunctions, so we look at the whole picture, not just the thyroid problem here. So let's review this one more time. Most people come see me for what they think is a thyroid problem. Most of the cases of thyroid are hypo or slow thyroid function. The way you determine that is a test called TSH. If the TSH is elevated, you have hypothyroid. 70 to 90% of all these people who have hypothyroid have a condition called autoimmune Hashimoto's. Autoimmune Hashimoto's means your own immune system is attacking your own thyroid. Okay? How do you know you have that? Is a test called antibodies. If the antibodies are positive, you have Hashimoto's. If the antibodies are negative, you have something called triggers. Depending upon what your antibodies test says, we're either going to do 1, 2, 3, and 4, or we're going to do 3 and 4. If you have positive antibodies, we're going to do section 6, 1 and 2 first, squelch the NF-κB protein complex, and then calm down the immune system by fixing the gut, where 70% of the immune system is housed. Then we're going to do section 7, number 3, identify triggers. Triggers are body dysfunctions that agitate the immune system and cause the immune system to attack the thyroid. But triggers are also body dysfunctions that very closely mimic a thyroid problem but isn't a thyroid problem. This is a list of the 9 most common triggers. It's not all of them, but it's the 9 most common. The most accurate way to find the triggers is to do lab testing. Lab tests tell me which of the triggers you have, the type of triggers you have, how to create your treatment plan, and most importantly, the priority of the triggers to go after in order. Once we've identified these triggers, now we can do section 7. Number 4 is remove the triggers. So now that I know the root cause, I can start creating natural protocols with vitamins, minerals, enzymes, amino acids, detoxes to start removing the triggers, which are actually the entire root cause. And this is how we integrate our treatment to look at the body as a whole and treat all these related systems together. As I mentioned, only proper testing is going to reveal the triggers, and only proper interpretation is going to reveal the triggers. This is a standard panel of what we do, a complete metabolic panel, 62 different tests. It's got a full thyroid panel with all the antibodies, vitamin D, anemia panel, blood sugar and stability markers, complete blood count, stealth infection markers, inflammation markers. This one panel here, this one blood panel will catch 5 out of 9 of those triggers. Okay? We also have a stealth infection panel where we look for Epstein-Barr viruses and other viruses like human herpes virus and Yersinia and Lyme disease. Right? So a lot of other 13 different viruses and bacteria panels. We have a stool microbial ecology. So we look for H. pylori, parasites, yeast and fungal overgrowth, bacteria overgrowth, dysbiosis in the gut, fungal infections. We have an adrenal stress profile that looks for adrenal gland dysfunction or adrenal fatigue. We test for cortisol rhythms and cortisol levels. And we also look for DHEA levels, which help make the cortisol. And we also look for the HPA axis, which is the brain to adrenal communication. Just like there's a brain to thyroid communication, there's a brain to adrenal communication. We look for that as well. And then there are immune reactivity screens where we look for chemical sensitivities. We have multiple autoimmune panels. We have neurological autoimmune panels. So between all these different tests, we will be able to catch all 9 of those triggers. Okay. For those of you who thought or who were told your lab tests are normal, but I still feel lousy, why is that? How is that possible? Well, I'm going to show you how this is possible. I want you to look at this standard lab test. I believe this is from Quest. And if you look here, look at the reference range. It doesn't say normal, it says reference. And it says 0.4 to 4.0. That's the TSH level. At this lab is 0.4 to 4.0. This person tested out at 4.08, so they are hypo or slow thyroid. Okay, so now let's look at this from LabCorp. If you look at this LabCorp panel now, look at this reference interval, 0.45 to 4.5. Wait a minute. This one was 0.4 to 4.0. This one is 0.45 to 4.5. How is that possible? How can there be 2 different lab normal ranges that are normal? Because there is no normal range for TSH in the lab world. Okay, all labs have a different range. It's different from Dallas to New York to Atlanta to Oklahoma. You know, anywhere in Oklahoma, all the lab tests values are different. Because the way they get their normals is they take a segment of that population, they put it in a bell curve, they throw out the highs, they throw out the lows, and that's how they get the range for that particular lab. So your lab ranges are going to be all over the place. This is why there's different normals. And this is why you'll see the lab ranges are much wider than the ones that I use. Okay? So functional lab ranges tell a totally different story here. Right? So functional lab ranges are much more narrow. So they're an early detection tool. They look for problems before they become disease processes. And when I look at these labs, I will take your labs and I will put them in my functional blood analysis ranges, and I'll look for something that's abnormal out of this range, but I'll also tell you what trigger number this refers to. So if you see a number in parentheses here that I've made a comment on, it's this blood marker here represents that trigger number. And number 2, if you look on the flow chart, that was blood sugar instability. Okay? Trigger number 6, that's gastrointestinal dysfunction. Trigger number 6, gastrointestinal dysfunction. Trigger number 2, blood sugar instability. So if you look at this individual and you see number 2, number 2, number 2, number 2, number 3, number 6, number 6, number 2, number 6, what am I saying is the issue here? That this problem has blood sugar stability issues, adrenal dysfunction issues, and gastrointestinal issues. That's how we know where the root cause of the problem is. We also have a hormone metabolite profile. We don't use this very often because honestly, most of the hormone problems are not production problems. So it's not that you're short on hormone, it's that you don't process it properly. Most people make enough hormone. If you don't make enough hormone, then maybe you're processing it right or you're not processing it right. It's hard to know. But this test here will tell us if you're making enough and if you're processing it right. Maybe you need hormone replacement. Okay, but keep in mind, if you do hormone replacement, you're telling the brain that you don't need to make any more hormone. You're actually going to be creating maybe more of a problem in the future than you currently have now. Okay? We also have a leaky gut test. Okay, remember I said 70% of your immune system is housed in your gut. So if you have a leaky gut problem, this is going to flare up your immune system. So what does leaky gut mean? It means that you have microscopic holes either through the cell wall of the gut or between the cells of the gut. So you have things like food and bacteria and different types of things go through the digestive tract. These little fingers absorb it, but some of them might escape through and gets into the immune system. So maybe like an organic carrot slips through here, gets into the bloodstream where the immune system is, and the immune system goes, what the heck is that? An organic carrot, that's not supposed to be here. It's supposed to be getting absorbed here. So it starts attacking this organic carrot, and now when it starts attacking the carrot, it starts agitating that immune system, and that immune system then starts attacking the thyroid. All because you have a gut problem. And even though you ate something healthy, if you don't fix that gut, you're going to agitate that immune system, cause that immune system to attack the thyroid. Okay. There are 3 components necessary for an immune system problem from autoimmune condition: is a leaky gut, environmental trigger, and genetic disposition. You must have those 3 components in order to have an autoimmune condition. And the perfect storm comes up where you have a leaky gut, you have environmental trigger, and your genetic disposition causes these 3 to come together, and now you have an autoimmune condition that shows up. We also have a stool microbial. So we take a stool test, we take 3 different samples, and we look for if there's too much bad bacteria, we look for if there's too much good bacteria. In this case, there was a yeast infection here, and they had some bad bacteria, so they definitely had a gut problem. They had number 8, stealth infection. So we look for those kinds of problems in your gut as well. We do the saliva test to look for this adrenal profile and look for this cortisol profile. See here, this is an abnormal HPA axis. So the brain is not talking to the adrenal glands properly. So this is not an adrenal problem, this is a brain problem, where this black line here should look like this green shaded, it should be right down the middle here. It should look like that green shaded area here. You see, so there's an HPA, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis problem. This issue here is this person feels stressed all day long. They're producing way too much cortisol. And as a result, it's starting to lower their DHEA level. So this soon will become low cortisol instead of high cortisol if they don't get this issue fixed. They're revving up their adrenal glands. The brain is thinking it's in stress mode most of the day, and it's causing some severe taxing on the adrenal glands. Here's a couple case studies that you may be able to relate to. This is Jackie. Jackie, for almost 10 years, had horrible fatigue, bloating. She had so much joint and bone pain that in itself was making her depressed. And she was unable to lose any kind of weight. She was actually retired, so she had the time to actually do things, but she couldn't because of her health. She tried a lot of other programs, no success at all. She came to me out of desperation. I found the triggers first. I found the inflammation trigger, the food sensitivity trigger, blood sugar instability, gastrointestinal trigger, adrenal dysfunction trigger, and an Epstein-Barr virus. And so I started treating the high priority triggers in her case first. Okay? Within 5 weeks, her brain fog had totally cleared up. Her fatigue was significantly better, and she had enough pain relief that she could actually start walking now where she couldn't even walk before. And I think she ended up losing 40 pounds in total. Christy is my long distance patient from France. And so her and I Skyped. She never actually came to the office, and we never actually saw each other until she did this Skype testimonial video for me. But Christy, since she was 17, was heavy all the time. Brain fog, pain in the stomach, gallbladder issues, liver pain, constant bloating, couldn't sleep, massive weight gain. She tried everything that she could. Believe me, healthcare in other countries is no better than the USA. Okay, people think that other countries are better because they pay for it. She'll tell you different. Because even if they pay for it, if you don't get the right care, it doesn't matter. Okay? So think about this. She found me on the internet because there was nobody between France and Los Angeles that she could find to help her. So across the world, she was willing to follow my advice and get my guidance and get treatment for her Hashimoto's. So we tested her for the triggers. I sent testing kits over there. She did some blood work over there. We found out that her main problem was inflammation. I put her on a de-inflammatory eating plan, sent her some very powerful liquid emulsified herbal compounds. She took those compounds, stuck to the eating plan religiously, and I think she ended up losing a total of 35 pounds in a matter of 3 to 4 months. Just amazing, amazing results. Okay? And after 2 weeks, she was 85% better. All these case studies that I'm going to go over, you can actually go onto my website, the Valley Thyroid Institute, and look at the video testimonials, and they are on there with their whole story. I think usually it's about a 3 to 7 minute video. But you'll find Christy on there, you'll find Jackie on there. Jennifer is also a long distance patient. She Skyped with me from the UK. And once again, multiple doctors in the UK. Yeah, UK gets free healthcare, but if they can't help you, it doesn't matter. She found me on the internet. Her husband, Walter, found me on the internet. They Skyped with me long distance. She had horrible fatigue, horrible brain fog, hair loss, insomnia, depression. Once again, I did the same protocol. I looked for the triggers. I tested for the triggers. I found out what the high priority triggers were. I provided herbal compounds, vitamins, minerals, enzymes, amino acids, detoxes, de-inflammatory eating plans to resolve those triggers. And after 4 months, she has a clear, clean, sharp brain. Her zest for life is back. She's able to exercise every day now. She's got a great story on Skype there. Dawn, this was almost too good for me to believe. Dawn had told me she had unrelenting body pain, and she said she was unable to leave the house for 2 years. And I thought that was a bit of an exaggeration. And I had actually talked to her husband on this, and I asked him, I said, is this accurate? She's saying that she didn't leave the house for 2 years. And he told me, yes, that was actually true. The only time she left the house was to go to doctor's appointments. And she tried to do those as infrequently as possible because they just weren't even helping. And so she literally was in the house for 2 years. You've got to listen to her story, her whole story on the video testimonials. But the doctors didn't do anything except medicate her, which just made her feel more depressed and more fatigued. And she actually became suicidal. Her husband had actually told me that she had attempted suicide 2 times. we did exactly what we did to everyone else. We looked for the triggers through different types of lab tests. Okay, we found out her main trigger was inflammation and food sensitivity. I put her on a very specific de-inflammatory eating plan. She stuck to it exactly like she should have. And in less than 4 weeks, she was able to get out of bed, began leaving the house, doing work around the house, doing chores. Her attitude and zest for life just skyrocketed. And her husband is just so happy that he got his wife back. That's a story you really have to hear, because that is, I'm just so pleased and proud to be able to be part of her healing on that. So this is your opportunity. Right? If you suffer from low thyroid or Hashimoto's and you're ready to get your life back, you might be wondering, can I help you? I've been to so many doctors. I spent so much money. I've put so much faith in these doctors, and they continually let me down. Okay, I've helped hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, over 1,000 people like you with my Valley Thyroid protocol. Okay, is it guaranteed? No, nothing's guaranteed. But I've got about a 98% success rate, and the likelihood is the closer you follow my protocol, the more likely you're going to get better. There are very few health opportunities where you have that high a percentage of being able to get better. Okay, so here's what's next. Okay, we're offering 7 new patients slots this month from this webinar. I have other sources that we're taking other patients from, and I never overload myself. Unlike a lot of other doctors, I spend 30 minutes at a time with you every 2 weeks. Think about that. Do you get 30 minutes of face-to-face time with your doctor every 2 weeks? No. Why is that? Because they've got too many patients. We limit our patient load. So we're only accepting 7 new patients this month from this webinar, and that's all we're going to do. Okay? You will receive a thorough 2-hour thyroid triggers discovery evaluation over 2 separate appointments. So we're going to spend 2 times with you, about 2 hours, not including the time I'm going to spend evaluating your labs, looking over your paperwork, formulating a different a protocol for you. Okay? This is all done remotely on phone or Skype. If you're international, we do Skype. If you're domestic USA, we do the phone, just like you saw in the case studies. Okay? I'll do a thorough evaluation of your labs and your health history. We actually have you send that in early. Okay, I need at least 2 days to look through your lab tests and your health history so I can really pinpoint what's going on. I pretty much know what's going on before I even talk to you. The discussion on the consultation is to confirm what I have, maybe discover some new information that you didn't tell me, and for me to ask you some questions. Okay, how can you possibly fill out a form in the doctor's office, the doctor looks at it for 5 minutes and then figures out what to do? Isn't that how it's done in the real world, where you go to the doctor, you fill out the form in the waiting room, you wait 2 hours, you see the doctor for 5 minutes, and then they figure out what to do? I've got 2 days that I have to look through this, so I really take my time on your protocol. Okay? You'll also receive a customized treatment plan along with personalized recommendations on how to correct your problem. So on that final visit, the last 2 hour, point of the last 2 hour, I create you a plan of action and recommendations. I tell you how long the proposed treatment plan is, what kinds of lab tests do we need to do, and how much do they cost. What are your responsibilities as the patient? What are my responsibilities as the doctor? What are your options for payment? And then at that point, you decide if you want to start working with me or just continue your search for another doctor. This is not cookie cutter. We do customized planning for each and every case, whether it's Hashimoto's or low thyroid. Okay, so here's what it'll do for you. It'll find the root cause of your problem. This is what you want. You want to find the root cause, which are the triggers that the other doctors missed. Think about this. Does the doctor talk to you about anemia and adrenal dysfunction and blood sugar instability and gastrointestinal issues and inflammation and food sensitivity and hormone imbalance and stealth infections? No, they're not talking about that. They're talking about what kind of medication you need to do. Okay, they're not talking to you about the triggers, which are the root cause of your problem. In my plan of action recommendations, you have a clear crystal clear, step-by-step plan to get your health and your life back on track. Okay? Like I said, if you follow our recommendations, we've got about a 98% success rate, no matter how difficult the case is. I would encourage you to go to the website, go to the Valley Thyroid Institute website, look at the testimonial pages, and look and listen to those stories. You'll find some of those people have the exact same problems as you do. Okay, so here's what I want you to do next. If you follow my system and my recommendations, you're likely to have a major turnaround in your health. Just like my wife Kim, just like these patients did. No matter what the other doctors have told you. Okay? I typically get contacted last after all the other doctors have failed. If that's where you are, you've got a good chance of recovery. Okay? You should schedule your thyroid trigger evaluation right now. Don't wait to do this. This is the best time. You have the information. You know this is the next step. This is what's supposed to be happening here. Okay? For $97, you can get your first appointment scheduled. Okay? You schedule in at the valleythyroidinstitute.com/discover, and you see a payment option there. You make that $97 payment. When we get that payment, we will email you a link to fill out some very detailed history forms. Okay? Once I get those detailed history forms, we will contact you and to schedule your 30-minute initial phone consultation or Skype consultation with me. Okay? If you get those forms filled out that day, I typically can speak to you less than a week from then. Okay? So here's what you should do right now. We have new patients coming in from other referrals. We have other marketing resources. We do other types of seminars. We're only going to accept 7 patients this month for this webinar. Okay, that's it, just 7 people. I am not going to overload myself like other doctors do and accept 25 new patients. There's 7 people from this webinar alone. Okay, your condition is likely not getting any better. I mean, think about it. How long have you had your condition? How many doctors have you seen? How much more money do you want to invest in something that's been doing the same thing? You won't help seeing another endocrinologist. It won't help seeing another GP. Okay? If you let it continue, this is time that you're never going to get back. Okay? Autoimmune conditions just worsen. They don't stabilize unless you take care of the triggers. They just continue to worsen. Okay? If you're not doing it for you, do it for the people who care about you. There are people who watch you suffer. So if you feel like you want to give up, do it for them. Do it for them so that they can have some joy in their life seeing you get better. Okay? This is a safe decision. It's only $97 and a little bit of your time. It's a very low cost way to finally discover the root cause of your problem. Even if you do this and you discover, hey, I don't want to do this with you, Dr. Kajiki, but what you said to me makes sense. I found the triggers. You can go find someone else. Okay, but at least you'll know what the root cause is of your problem. Okay? We've got hundreds and hundreds of success stories. Okay? We have well over 200 success stories just on our website alone. Those are for only the people who weren't so shy that they were willing to give me a video. Okay? So what I'm saying here is this. Go to the website, go to valleythyroidinstitute.com/discover, schedule your pay for your consultation of $97, get your paperwork downloaded, fill that out, and get your 30-minute consultation scheduled with us, and get back on the road to better health.